Mr. Scorsese. One quick question. How do you feel tonight?
Oh, I'm very excited.
For more than 40 years, Robert De Niro and Martin Scorsese have been making movie magic. They don't just belong to Hollywood, they are Hollywood. When the powerful pair first teamed up for 1973's Mean Streets, they could never have imagined that their collaboration would lead to a lifelong friendship.
Everyone to see the film tonight.
And how was it to work with Robert De Niro and Leonardo DiCaprio together on your set?
The actor and director enjoy a professional relationship and personal friendship that goes back 5 decades, and they both express their deep respect for each other.
What's the best direction?
They were always terrific. I always had good times with Marty. He just has a special way of working that...
At 82, Robert De Niro finally opens up about his long-standing friendship with Martin Scorsese. This man changed not just his career, but his whole life. It's not just about a director and an actor, but 2 young men who fought against all odds, had misunderstandings, reconciled, and together built the legacy that changed the way we look at movies forever. The first spark.
We were kids, just hanging out in different...
You grew up in the same neighborhood.
Before De Niro and Martin Scorsese became popular, they were just young men. De Niro and Martin Scorsese were brought up blocks apart in the Greenwich Village area of Manhattan, but never formally met when they were young.
And we'd see each other in different places at different dances, neighborhood dances and things like that. And he was always remembered as a very nice kid.
Robert Anthony De Niro was born in the Manhattan borough of New York City on August 17, 1943, the only child of painters Virginia Admiral and Robert De Niro Sr. His parents separated when he was 2 years old after his father announced that he was raised by his mother, and against his parents' wishes, his grandparents had him secretly baptized into the Catholic Church while he was staying with them during his parents' divorce.
And how was it to work with Robert De Niro and Leonardo DiCaprio together on your set?
Very much like a family project.
He attended PS 41, a public elementary school in Manhattan, through the 6th grade. He began acting classes at the Dramatic Workshop and made his stage debut in school at age 10, playing the Cowardly Lion in The Wizard of Oz. He later went to Elizabeth Irwin High School, the upper school of the Little Red Schoolhouse, for the 7th and 8th grades. He was then accepted into the High School of Music, Art for the 9th grade, but attended for only a short time before transferring to a public junior high school. Is 71, Charles Evans Hughes Junior High School. Growing up, he was nicknamed Bobby Milk because he was so thin and as pale as milk.
You've been working with Martin Scorsese for more than 4 decades. What kind of relationship do you have with him?
He found performing as a way to relieve his shyness and became fascinated by cinema, so he dropped out of high school at 16 to pursue acting. He later said, "When I was around 18, I was watching a TV show and I said, if these actors are making a living at it and they're not really that good, I can't do any worse than them." He studied acting at HB Studio and Lee Strasberg's Actor Studio. On the other side of the city was Martin Scorsese. Unlike De Niro, he wasn't on the streets. He couldn't because he had asthma and could not play sports or take part in any activities with other children, so his parents and his older brother would often take him to movie theaters. It was at this stage in his life that he developed a passion for cinema. He has spoken of the influence of Powell and Pressburger's Black Narcissus, 1947, and The Red Shoes, 1948. As a teenager in the Bronx, he frequently rented Powell and Pressburger's The Tales of Hoffman from a store that had one copy of the reel. He was one of only 2 people who regularly rented it. The other, George A. Romero, also became a director.
I wanted to be a filmmaker. First of all, coming from where I came from, nobody became a filmmaker. It was crazy to think of.
It was so funny. De Niro, the quiet watcher of real people. Scorsese, the obsessed watcher of films. 2 different worlds. 2 different lenses. And yet, both were learning the same lesson. Life is performance. Fast forward to the late 1960s. A young Scorsese was trying to break into filmmaking, carrying the raw energy of the streets into his student projects. Meanwhile, De Niro was struggling as a stage actor, taking whatever small roles he could get.
Well, I hung out in his neighborhood.
Were you on Ken Mayer or Ken Mayer?
Ken Mayer.
I was on Prince and Elizabeth.
When introduced at a party in 1972, the 2 came to realize that they had seen each other many times but had never spoken. Bob was sitting there after dinner, and then he looked at Scorsese, who reminded him of the people he used to hang out with, indicating that he knew him through and through. He said, "You used to hang out with so-and-so and so-and-so." Scorsese was surprised as to how he knew him, as much as he knew people he used to hang out with. "Yeah, how do you know?" he asked. De Niro replied, "I'm Bobby." The 2 have now worked together on 9 films, including their most recent Netflix mob drama, The Irishman, which stars Al Pacino and Joe Pesci and is nominated for 10 Oscars and 4 Screen Actors Guild Awards.
And after dinner, he said, I know you're so-and-so, and you used to hang out with so-and-so and so-and-so.
Their paths crossed again through mutual friends in the tiny, gritty New York film scene, Mean Streets. Chronologically speaking, Mean Streets is Scorsese's third film as a director, and it was not his first crime film. Meanwhile, the film was De Niro's 10th credited acting role. In sharp contrast to his later and more famous works, De Niro was notably not this film's star or main character.
How long had you known De Niro when this happened?
I just met him. Brian De Palma introduced us, and then Jay Cox, my friend Jay, and Verna.
His character, Johnny Boy, was one of the most integral supporting figures in the film's chronicling of a day in the life of young gangster Charlie Kappa, Harvey Keitel. However, this film was the first time that Scorsese worked with De Niro. It's because of this and its dark subject that Mean Streets can be considered to be the first truly Scorsese picture in the filmmaker's prestigious career.
Going back into Mean Streets, De Niro had been in the same area where I grew up.
Mean Streets was the testing ground for Scorsese's signature themes, most notably those related to Catholic guilt, the Italian-American criminal underworld, and toxic masculinity. What's more, these ideas were inseparable from each other because Scorsese literally lived them. Having grown up in Little Italy during its most turbulent years, Scorsese knew firsthand that the neighborhood was a breeding ground for the worst kinds of men imaginable. Where his previous films were just crime stories, Mean Streets was an honest depiction of the world he grew up in.
It really happened on Taxi Driver, I think. In Mean Streets, we're going so fast. We shot in 26 days. We're going so fast. I had total trust in him.
It's not difficult to see how Mean Streets paved the way for Taxi Driver, Goodfellas, and The Irishman. These later films doubled down and improved on Mean Streets' scathing depiction of the kind of men who were frequently romanticized by Pulp Fiction. Unlike classic gangster films that gave their criminals some level of class and intellect, the criminals of Mean Streets were all detestable lowlives. They lived aimless existences defined by pointless fights. None of them had any ambition that was greater than being an overgrown boy. They fought and killed one another over petty matters like childish insults or small amounts of money. I consider myself very lucky to have that long of a relationship with him. De Niro tells People magazine in the issue of Scorsese, "I can't imagine my life without it," he added. The Fusion era.
Things in there that were written in the script, some were ad-libbed and improvised, and I forget how we arrived.
Mean Streets was the spark. It paved the way for future collaborations between De Niro and Martin Scorsese. Scorsese realized that De Niro was what he wanted, and together they redefined what movies would be. After Mean Streets came Taxi Driver, 1976.
The movie Taxi Driver, that line, the famous line where you're looking into the mirror and you say, "Are you talking to me?"
It was 1976, and following the Vietnam War that had left scars on America, cities like New York were crumbling with crime, poverty, and loneliness. Scorsese looked at the chaos and thought, this is a story worth telling. The movie stars De Niro, stepping into the shoes of Travis Bickle, a Vietnam veteran turned cab driver drifting through the city's underbelly. What Scorsese saw in De Niro was more than talent. It was fearlessness. He saw a man with passion and one who was able to slip into character. De Niro didn't just act as Travis, he became him. He killed the role so much that it shook the industry.
You actually got a taxi cab driver's license when you did Taxi Driver.
He would drive New York cabs for weeks in preparation, silently absorbing the city's energy. He learned the different routes, learned the routines, the frustrations, and the loneliness of men working long hours with no one to talk to, all to play the role perfectly. During an appearance on Live with Kelly and Mark, De Niro recalled how some of the best moments in film come from spontaneous improvisation. Some of the best stuff, not always, is when it's improvised. De Niro told hosts Kelly Ripa and Mark Consuelos.
And my favorite, probably, you talking to me. Did you ever think that a line that you uttered about milking a cat or milking yourself would become...
In Taxi Driver, De Niro's portrayal of disturbed cabbie Travis Bickle birthed one of the most memorable scenes in cinema history. Standing in front of a mirror, Bickle talks to himself and points a gun at his reflection as he imagines facing off with a foe. And then, on set, he delivered one of the most iconic lines in movie history, a line that wasn't even in the script. "You talking to me?" That wasn't written by Paul Schrader. It wasn't directed by Scorsese. It was pure De Niro, staring into the mirror, pushing himself deeper into Travis's psyche. The result was a scene so powerful it became part of pop culture forever. Taxi Driver didn't just win awards. It announced to the world that Scorsese and De Niro were the most dangerous, daring duo in Hollywood.
Improvised.
Yes, and I produced...
That was just the beginning of their collaboration. They worked on Raging Bull,
The casting, the script, because you put your heart and your soul into everything. I mean, your performances are monumental. Or do you just...
If Taxi Driver was the spark, then Raging Bull was the fire itself. The story of Jake LaMotta, the tortured boxer whose rage destroyed everything he loved, was personal for both men. Scorsese was at one of his lowest points in life, battling addiction and considering walking away from filmmaking altogether. It was De Niro who wouldn't let him quit. De Niro believed Raging Bull was a story worth telling and worth saving Scorsese for. He pushed Scorsese to make the film. He pushed himself to the limit. He trained like a real fighter, entering the ring with professionals who didn't hold back. The audience was stunned. This wasn't just acting. This was a transformation. The 1980 American biographical sports drama film, directed by Martin Scorsese and starring Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci, Kathy Moriarty, Teresa Saldana, Frank Vincent, and Nicholas Colasanto, is an adaptation of former middleweight boxing champion Jake LaMotta's 1970 memoir, Raging Bull, My Story. It follows the career of LaMotta, played by De Niro, his rise and fall in professional boxing, and his turbulent personal life beset by rage and jealousy.
Now that you've had such great success with Martin Scorsese, does that mean that we will see this?
Scorsese was initially reluctant to develop the project, although he eventually came to relate LaMotta's story. Paul Schrader rewrote Martin's first screenplay, and together, Scorsese and De Niro made contributions thereafter. Pesci was an unknown actor before the film, as was Moriarty, whom Pesci suggested for her role. When it was time to play LaMotta, De Niro gained approximately 60 pounds, eating his way into obesity just to capture the physical and emotional decay of the man. In the process of editing and mixing the film, Scorsese was expecting it to be his last major feature. He closely studied Luchino Visconti's Rocco and his brothers, especially the way the fight scenes are filmed, a technique he integrated into Raging Bull. Also, he was inspired for this film by the character of Rocco. Alain Delon played the professional boxer to help shape De Niro's interpretation of Jake LaMotta.
I'm not sure. I don't know. I mean, we're doing another movie now, and...
What is the new film you're doing?
It's called The King of Comedy.
After the release of Raging Bull, it gained recognition and praise from all over the world. Today, it is considered one of the greatest films ever made. In 1990, it became the first film to be selected in its first year of eligibility for preservation in the United States National Film Registry by the Library of Congress as being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. It was also ranked by the American Film Institute as the fourth greatest American movie of all time. The next movie they worked on was The King of Comedy.
Critic for Newsweek, and he gave us the script, and
The King of Comedy is a 1982 black comedy film directed by Martin Scorsese and starring Robert De Niro in his fifth collaboration with Scorsese, Jerry Lewis, and Sandra Bernhard. Written by Paul D. Zimmerman. The story follows Rupert as he idolizes talk show host Jerry Langford, played by Jerry Lewis, and goes to unsettling lengths to force his way into stardom. He convinces himself he's destined for greatness, but his obsession blurs the line between ambition and madness, developing a plan to kidnap Langford just to get a shot at performing on live television.
I was trying to convince Marty to do it, and
Scorsese directs the film with a sharp satirical edge, exploring themes of celebrity culture, obsession, and the dark side of the American dream. At the time, the movie wasn't a big box office success, but over the years it's gained recognition as a visionary piece that predicted the rise of celebrity obsession and media sensationalism. The studio 20th Century Fox had released the movie in theaters on February 13, 1983, and critics were impressed with the movie, tagging it as a major achievement for all I solved.
I don't know whether it's a comedy or what. It was just whatever.
De Niro's performance is often praised as one of his boldest. He makes Rupert both pathetic and unsettlingly sympathetic, and Scorsese's choice to push the tone into dark comedy instead of pure drama makes the film stand out in his filmography.
So hard to direct comedy. I watched Jerry do it a number of times. I had him do like the scene in the street.
People in America were confused by the King of Comedy and saw Bob as some loud mannequin. Scorsese says about De Niro, while others thought it was his best performance ever after Taxi Driver. The next movie they worked together on was Goodfellas.
You choose people who don't have that, who don't understand the lifestyle, who don't understand what you're trying to do, then there will never be.
Produced in 1990, Goodfellas is an American biographical gangster film directed by Martin Scorsese and written by Nicholas Pileggi and Scorsese.
It was just going to make another film dealing with gangster subculture.
It is a critically acclaimed American gangster film, regarded as one of the finest works of director Martin Scorsese's career. Its creative cinematography and outstanding performances by actors including Robert De Niro, Ray Liotta, Joe Pesci, and Lorraine Bracco give this examination of life in organized crime a lasting influence on films in the gangster and crime genres. Born out of the 1972 gangster epic, The Godfather, but in contrast to the latter film's focus on the top levels of leadership in the mafia, Goodfellas sheds light on what life is like for the lower-level soldiers who do most of their crime family's work.
Famous for doing an enormous amount of research into the roles you play. What kind of research?
Based on the true story of New York mobster Henry Hill, as told in American author and screenwriter Nicholas Pileggi's 1985 biography Wise Guy, Life in a Mafia Family. The film began in 1955, when a teenage Hill began working for a cap regime or lieutenant in the Lucchese crime family, to 1980, when Hill was arrested for trafficking. The film also touches on Hill's role in the 1978 Lufthansa heist of $5.8 million in cash and jewels at the John F. Kennedy International Airport in New York City, which led to the murders of some of Hill's associates. De Niro played Jimmy Conway, the cool, calculated, and always simmering with danger just beneath the surface. And while Joe Pesci's performance stole the spotlight, De Niro was the anchor, the calm at the center of the storm. Goodfellas became a cultural phenomenon. And once again, the world saw what happened when Scorsese and De Niro came together. It was an explosion.
Where I think De Niro tells him at one point, bring him here tonight.
Yeah.
And then he changes his mind, you know.
The dynamism of Scorsese's filmmaking in Goodfellas acts as a double-edged sword. It stokes romantic macho ideals and mocks them with a single cut. Before it exploded into the world, the not remotely matched gold standard for mob movies had been Francis Ford Coppola's pair of Godfather blockbusters, which used stoic, somber rigor and ritual to present the mafia as a fascinating covert world of closed doors and secrets. These movies were stepping stones for their future collaborations, as they made several other movies together, totaling about 10 of them. Scorsese has never had the need to sideline De Niro because he always brings his A game when it comes to acting. At 82, Robert De Niro is not the man he once was. He is older now and slower. His voice was softened by years of experience. But when he talks about Martin Scorsese, something lights up. He speaks about their bond openly. He calls Scorsese his brother, not in the Hollywood sense, but in the truest sense of the word. For De Niro, their films weren't just movies, they were life markers. Mean Streets was their youth, Taxi Driver their anger, Raging Bull their struggle, Goodfellas their energy, The Irishman their reflection. And now in his 80s, De Niro treasures their bond more than the awards, more than the fame. Because at the end of it all, what lasts isn't the applause, but the people who walk the journey with you. Together, they renamed Hollywood, but more importantly, they made a friendship that endured through success, through failure, and time itself. At 82, De Niro doesn't talk about legacy the way critics do. He doesn't list awards or box office numbers. Instead, he talks about gratitude. Gratitude for the man who stood beside him, film after film, year after year. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. See you in our next video.